Back in college, I majored in both biology and religious studies. And so, as you can imagine, I have always been fascinated with bioethics, which means that I love characters like the High Evolutionary and Mr. Sinister and others from literature like Frankenstein and Dr. Moreau that really explore the ideas in that field. And so I was super excited to finally see the High Evolutionary come to the MCU in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I thought his character was awesome in that film. In fact, I think that he seemed like a more terrifying Thanos-level villain than Kang did in Ant-Man. But I'm curious, if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 3, what did you think about this character? Well, that movie inspired me to do another edition of Character Keys, where I'm going to talk about 5 High Evolutionary keys at 5 different price levels, so that if you love that character as much as I do, you can find a cool comic to add to your collection no matter what your budget. So to start off, if I had $3, I would be looking to pick up a copy of X Factor Annual number 3. And this is significant because it's the first part in what is probably the High Evolutionary's most famous storyline, called the Evolutionary War. And in this story, the High Evolutionary tries to save the universe because he senses there's this cosmic imbalance, because there's this alien species on the other side of the universe that has accelerated in its evolution so quickly. And so he thinks that in order to save the universe, he needs to accelerate humanity's evolution really quickly. And he starts to do so by some questionable means, and that leads to this war. But that storyline gets started here in this annual, and it's also the beginning of a series of backstories in all of these annuals that go on to tell the origin of the High Evolutionary. And another cool thing about this story is that it's the first time that Marvel did this company-wide crossover through all of its titles in its annuals. And this became a thing over the next few years. It led to stories like Atlantis Attacks, but all of that started with this, the Evolutionary War. And finally, since as many of you know, I love my battle covers, this is a cool book to pick up because it has a cool battle cover between Apocalypse and the High Evolutionary. Now, speaking of cool battle covers between villains, this brings me to my second pick, which if you have $15, you can look to buy a copy of Fantastic Four 175, which is most well known for having this classic Jack Kirby Galactus High Evolutionary battle cover. And this is actually my personal favorite High Evolutionary cover, and part of that is because I'm also a fan of Galactus covers. And so it's a really cool cover to add to your collection, but it also has a pretty interesting story. So what happens in this story is Galactus is looking for a planet to eat, as Galactus does, and he discovers Counter-Earth. Now, this is the planet that the High Evolutionary had reshaped and filled with creatures that he had made. But when Galactus finds it, he wants to eat it. And for some reason, the High Evolutionary isn't really excited about that idea, and so he gets into a battle with Galactus. Now, first of all, this just shows how amazing the High Evolutionary is, because he's just a human who has experimented on himself and accelerated his own evolution, but he's done such an incredible job of it that he has become a cosmic being on par with Galactus. I mean, what do you have to do to be a human that can fight against Galactus? I mean, you have to be awesome, and that's what the High Evolutionary is. And so they engage in this battle, and lots of things happen, but to make a long story short, Galactus finds out about another planet that he can eat, and so he does that. But the planet actually is poisonous to him, and you find out later why. But the High Evolutionary begins to have some sympathy for him. He realizes, hey, man, Galactus is pretty awesome, just like me, and so I'm going to help him. I'm going to try to save him from this poison, and I'm going to accelerate his own evolution and turn him into this giant brain. But unfortunately, it's too little, too late, and Galactus ends up seemingly dying. But if you love the High Evolutionary, you love Galactus, you love Jack Kirby, this is definitely a book to add to your collection for only $15. Now, if I had $30, I'd be looking to pick up a pretty nice copy of Thor number 135, which is the second appearance of the High Evolutionary. And as we've talked about before, if you've been priced out of the first appearance of a character, the second appearance is a nice book to pick up. In addition, this book also tells the High Evolutionary's origin for the first time, which makes it another important key for the character. And as an added bonus, this is actually the first time that Thor calls his hammer Mjolnir. And so if you're a Thor fan, then this is also a great book to add as one of his minor keys. Now, before we get to the next key, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, of course, I'd really appreciate if you do so right now. So for my fourth pick, if you had $100, you could consider picking up a pretty nice copy of Marvel Premiere #1, and this is the first appearance of Counter-Earth. But it's also the book where the High Evolutionary takes a character known only as him at that point and alters his genetic structure and transforms him into Adam Warlock. And so this is a huge Adam Warlock key. It's the first time that he's called Warlock, and he ends up becoming the protector of Counter-Earth. Now, over time, he starts to see some of the questionable things that the High Evolutionary does, and he thinks, hey, I don't know about that. Should I really be in allegiance with this guy? And so they have a falling out, and it leads to their conflict and all that kind of stuff. But the story of Adam Warlock for real begins here in this issue. Now that brings me to the Grail, which of course is Thor #134, which contains the first appearance and first cover appearance of the High Evolutionary. But it's also the first appearance of Man-Beast, which was this wolf that the High Evolutionary had experimented on and accelerated its evolution, but who went on to become one of the High Evolutionary's main enemies. And so his inclusion is another reason why this book is a must-have for any High Evolutionary fan. And the good thing about this book is, compared to the Grails of other villains like Dr. Doom or even King, it's fairly affordable. You can find a pretty nice copy for $150 or less, which obviously isn't nothing, but it's not $10,000 like Dr. Doom's first appearance is. Now, this book is cool because it also contains the first appearance of Fafnir, who's a dragon that Thor ends up fighting, as well as the first appearance of Wundagore Mountain, which is a location important for the High Evolutionary story because it's his headquarters for a period of time, but it also has a lot of significance for other characters like the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and Werewolf by Night and Spider-Woman. It factors into all of their stories. And so a nice little key to have for those reasons as well. Now, if you're priced out of this book, a nice consolation could be Marvel Spectacular #5, which is the first time that this book is reprinted, and you can find that for probably about $10. So there you have it, 5 keys at 5 different price levels. Tell me what you think about the High Evolutionary. Do you agree with me that he seems a little scarier than Kang? Or do you think that he's a little bit more of a mid-level villain? Now, of course, I am hoping that his appearance in the Guardians creates enough interest in the character that he has more of a presence going forward in comic books and other forms of media. I really feel probably no one other than dedicated comic book fans even knew this character existed before the movie. Like if you just asked some casual MCU fan who's the High Evolutionary, they would have looked at you clueless. And I hope this brings some awareness to the character and that he grows and develops. But again, tell me what you think. But I hope this video was helpful. And of course, I'd appreciate if you like and subscribe, help our channel grow. And thanks for watching. And as always, I look forward to the next one.